On October 22, 1962, only 3 years after the infamous Bay of Pigs, a failed invasion into Cuba to overthrow the new communist government, President Kennedy gave a speech on live TV, addressing the medium-range Soviet missiles in Cuba, which had been spotted 8 days earlier, the 14th of October. This was the beginning of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba. Within the past week, unmistakable evidence has established the fact that a series of offensive missile sites is now in preparation on that imprisoned island. The purpose of these bases can be none other than to provide a nuclear strike capability against the Western Hemisphere.
The day after Kennedy's speech, the military went on full alert at DEFCON 2, one step away from nuclear war. The military then took drastic steps to be prepared for an attack.
For more security, they didn't want them all in one place, so they moved some of them in different places, and one of them was Logan. They were F-101 fighters, and they were in a Quonset hut storage, and I don't even know where it is today on the base, but it was isolated, and the crews that were going to fight and manage them if they needed to were in the Quonset hut with the planes, and we were outside the doors keeping anybody from coming in that we didn't want in.
Charles Hildreth was a part of the Air Police, a division of the Air Force that patrolled air bases. During the crisis, those duties turned to protecting the 4 fighters at Logan and their crews, who were always alert.
This is a special report from CBS News. Good evening, this is Walter Cronkite at CBS News headquarters in New York.
It wasn't easy for civilians either. The news cycle was flooded with reports and updates on the crisis. Everyone were on their toes, anxious and fearful. Mr. Hildreth's wife, Nancy, who was expecting at the time, remembers
about being in my living room with your father, a little child, 18 months old, and a playpen, and I was ironing, and I was expecting Auntie Tracy any day. And I must have been watching the news, but I can remember with my iron just crying, tears dripping off my chin, because I was afraid that the world was going to be blown into bits at any time.
Thankfully, the world didn't end. Charles and Nancy are now living happily in New Hampshire, but it wasn't just luck that got them there. Behind closed doors, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev was communicating with Kennedy. On October 26, Khrushchev sent Kennedy an emotional message explaining that the Soviets too wanted the crisis to be over. It suggested that the US and USSR work together. However, a second message the following day stated the US would also have to remove its missiles from Italy and Turkey. Officially, the US ignored this request, but it secretly removed the missiles to comply. The crisis ended on October 28th when the agreement was made official, but many Americans saw the real end as November 20th, as that was when the last missiles were removed. Either way, that Thanksgiving was a thankful one.
We were grateful that President Kennedy and Khrushchev were able to reach an understanding.
And the missiles were removed. That was the important thing.
While nuclear annihilation was avoided, there was one U.S. casualty. Rudolph Anderson Jr., a spy pilot shot down over Cuba on the 27th of October. Although just one man, his loss was still felt by those in the service.
We lost a pilot.
Thanks to the leadership and diplomacy of both the US and USSR, the world thankfully did not